done for. Everyone get out.
Greetings sailors, welcome to the first of my World of Warships Tirpitz winners videos. Now these are some of the runners up and also somebody who got a bonus prize because Cherweg here in the Iwaki Alpha technically was not one of the winners, and I don't have any Dianas to give you, unfortunately, Cherweg. I'm going to give you some doubloons out of my own pocket because I realised as the contest wore on that yes, the rules I set out actually heavily favour mid-tier Japanese destroyers. Also, arguably, aircraft carriers at the higher tiers, but we only had one of those. Well, actually, no, we had two entries. I had two entries, but only one of those is a winner. So, all the rest of them are going to be destroyers. Not all Japanese destroyers, but they are all going to be destroyers. So what I decided to do was to take the next best non-destroyer entry, which was Cherweg's here, and throw a bonus prize to them, because otherwise it would have been I think they would have been in with a good chance of getting one of the Dianas. So the way I've decided to split these videos up is we're going to have Cherweg's game, we're going to have two of the Diana winners, we're going to have another game with the other two Diana winners, and then we are going to have a third video with the first and second place winners. So all that said, let's talk about the game. Now, I did consider splitting these all up into just a lot of little clips, and it would have made a much shorter video, but honestly, all these replays were pretty entertaining in one way or another. So we're going to get the full whack of Cherweg's game here, and yes, this is the very first engagement, and that delightfully named, what is that, Minikaze? Yeah, they kind of screwed up. Now, he does boop the guy slightly, or gal possibly, but honestly they were going to take those torpedoes anyway. However, Cherweg apologises all the same. Meanwhile, he got his first strike and devastating strike medals. First blood, rather. It's a bit confusing. I think on the wiki it says first strike, or maybe I'm just making that up in my head entirely. That's possible. He also runs aground, but it doesn't matter because although there was a Tenryu round the corner, it looks very much like they've run away, and that could have been a problem because the Tenryu, of course, also has torpedoes. Now, you might have noticed this thing is a cruiser, but it has smoke. Well, if you didn't already know, this was the Alpha Tester reward ship. It's a tier 4 cruiser, and the unique ability of it is that it can indeed get smoke charges. So that's going to come in a little bit useful later on, although obviously this is still a cruiser. The detection ranges aren't going to be nearly as good as a same tier Japanese destroyer, or even a same tier American destroyer, so you still have to bear that in mind. It's definitely of slightly more limited utility than the destroyers, but still, this is not a huge ship, and I don't think the detectability range is that high. It's something around 10 kilometers? I'm not sure, I'd have to look that up. Anyway, so he's dealt with that, having knocked out that enemy destroyer so convincingly, and having seen absolutely no sign of the Tenryu, he decides to press around. And the fact that the Tenryu seems to have backed off, now they could just be sitting in wait around this corner, but we're about to find out. No, it doesn't look like it. Okay, the fact that they've backed off means that they probably don't have a lot of support on this side, and that they've just decided to retreat instead of risking confrontation with a higher tier destroyer, not destroyer, cruiser. However, at this moment, lo and behold, that's another Minikaze. Now, this is bad. This is very, very bad. This guy is at point blank range practically. Cherweg's putting his guns to work, but this guy is going to drop torpedoes, and oh, the dodges! Oh, the dodges are real. The dodges are real. Puts out his own torps at point blank range, and boom, there we go, another devastating strike. I keep wanting to say, well, you know. At that moment, the Tenryu appears, but yeah, those torps are a lot easier to dodge, and not quite such a brown trouser moment there, but still, this is this is all very exciting. Now, Cherweg does mess up a bit here in that I think, given that he's point blank range practically against this Tenryu, this is, if he'd been firing AP shells, he could have taken this guy out a lot quicker. But the enemy Tenryu, I'm not sure if he's firing AP in return. I think so. The shell tracers look a bit different, so Maybe the Awaki Alpha is just hard to citadel. Maybe the enemy Tenryu was just not aiming very well. But anyway, he's burning this guy and he's doing damage, but I think AP citadels would have taken him down so much quicker. His steering also gets knocked out. However, there we go. He burns the guy, and although his steering is knocked out, he's not in immediate danger of running into things. Although he is heading towards 2 battleships, and there's also a 3rd one that's just pulling into the C point. So any moment now he's going to realise that his steering's knocked out and do something about it. And it's a good thing it wasn't sending him into the island. That would have been bad. I also want to point out, I mean, the brown trouser moment with the Minikaze. He did the smart thing in that he kept his bow towards that guy. He knew that there were going to be torps in the water, and by far the easiest way to dodge torpedoes at that kind of point-blank range. And it's difficult, and it was incredibly close, but the easiest way to do it is to not just make a turn, not give them your side. And if you can do it while they are stern onto you, then that's so much the better, because at that point their torpedoes are having to chase you as well. But as it was, yeah, that just about worked out. Now I wondered if he was going to drop torps, and this is a high risk maneuver. And the Wyoming isn't paying attention to him, but the Miyogi is right in his face, and maybe the guy's turrets were just turned round to the south. But he does his own point-blank range drop here, and this guy is never going to dodge. And I'm not quite sure why the Miyogi was closing the distance. Personally, I would have been trying to open up the distance, especially if I couldn't get my guns around in time. But the Miyogi didn't, and he has paid a very heavy price. Now, it looks like that Wyoming is finally opening up on him, and he has taken some heavy damage at this point. But still enough to stand a couple of hits if he doesn't get citadeled. Now, it looks like he's probably going to burn out this Wyoming, and that's going to be a nice bit of extra damage there, and there we go. But most of his damage so far has been from those torpedo drops, and that obviously is going to be a theme with the destroyer replays as well. Some of them are going to be very high damage torp drop games indeed. In terms of the actual points, I mean, it looks like this team is ahead. Choeg's actually got 5 kills here, and although we are in the lead, it doesn't do to get complacent in this game, because these leads can sometimes turn around very quickly. A couple of low health battleships dying all at the same time can knock off a lot of points. And also bear in mind that they've only got 2/3 of the capture circles, although he's just captured 1, and the C point is about to get captured by an Omaha, so actually that is about to go in their favour as well. But that was not a situation that they wanted to let be alone for too long. They did not, absolutely did not want to let the enemy just have all 3 cap circles, because even if they were killing the ships, it's still possible for somebody, for a team to pull ahead on points, and for it to go from a certain victory to an incredibly frustrating loss. So at this point, he looks like he is thinking of trying to be sneaky, get some torpedo drops on a battleship maybe. But there is a Murmansk up there, and that's a very, very dangerous opponent. It's got very fast-firing guns. HE or AP will do a lot of damage very quickly, because he doesn't have a lot of health left at this point. So a couple of salvos potentially is all it would take. We do know there's at least one other battleship around as well that hasn't been spotted yet, apparently. And, oh, there's that Wyoming. So, oh, well, there was a battleship and now he's dead. That's probably why he's not on the minimap. Anyway. So, at this point, I think Choeg has just made a somewhat fatal mistake. Now, I don't know. I think he got spotted anyway. I think it was by the Wyoming, and he wasn't expecting the Wyoming to be there, and he just kind of, I don't know, he opens up fire at the Murmansk, and that's fine, and pulls into cover behind the island, and that's also fine. But he knows the Wyoming is coming through this passage. But the thing is, the Wyoming knows that he's going to be trying to do this. So this is incredibly high risk, to the point where I would have just disengaged. I would have gone towards the friendly Wyoming. I would not have tried this, because, yeah, this guy is forewarned. He has his guns pointing in the right direction, and boom. And he actually takes Cherweg's magazine, which results in a detonation award. And it does seem slightly silly that the game awards you for getting ammo racked, essentially. But it's an extra medal. It still counts. And even though it may seem a little silly that this is the thing that tips him over into getting a bit of gold, or doubloons really, this was still a really good game, I think. And that very first, not the very first, torp dodge, yes, I suppose I could say that. The very first torp dodge against that Minikaze, where he just, that was such a brown trouser moment. It's just like, I was edge of my seat watching that the first time round. So that was 5 medals with 1846 base XP. He had something in the region of, 85,000 damage, something like that. So that was a pretty good game, all in all. So the first of our Diana winners is this Minikaze player. This is Trigger Happy Dad, who I happen to know is a German player, and I think he actually promoted the contest on the German section of the Warships forums as well, so thank you for that. You have actually won a prize as well, and he actually submitted a couple of entries, which was perfectly fine, and this was obviously his best one. Now, the Minikaze, despite having lost its 10km torps, is still a pretty strong little ship. And in fact, this is not the first Minikaze replay you're going to see of the winners, although not all of the destroyers were Japanese, as I think I've said. So he's just circling around this middle area at the moment, looking for an unwary battleship, and that New Mexico looks like he'll do nicely. Now, this is where having the sixth sense skill, as it is essentially, for a battleship is especially useful. And also you want to avoid doing things like this, sailing in front of passages. Now, he's not going exactly in front of, it's not that close forward to the gap between the islands. He does in theory have enough time to maneuver, but if he does have sixth sense, he hasn't paid attention to it, because although these torps look like they were drop blind, I'm not sure if they were or not. They might have actually been dropped using the marker, because replays don't always pick that up. Some of the replay features are a bit wonky at the moment. It doesn't always work 100%. So anyway, 4 hits. That was a pretty devastating strike. Already 30,000 plus damage. No medals yet, though, but those will come. And although that guy is going to repair, as you can see, his health's going up, he's not going to be able to cover anything like all of that damage. Now, there's a New Mexico that's very, very close around that island as well, and I think that was Trigger Happy's next target, although I'm not sure, because the New Mexico is actually heading away at the moment. And if you're in something like a battleship and there's a destroyer nearby, heading away from them, as I mentioned in the previous Iwaki game, just anything with torpedoes, if the torpedoes have to chase you, it's more difficult. And there we go, he actually gets a hit in the New Mexico. And does he get another one? Yep, there we go, there's a second, so that's another nice chunk of damage. But travelling away from somebody makes it that much harder to get torps into them and to actually get strikes. What am I trying to say here? I don't know. Anyway, so this is a minute and a bit later on. He has just been circling around. There was a Gremiashi that popped up on the 2 line, and I think again he was just waiting for opportunities. However, this Kuma appearing is not particularly welcome, because although it's a tier lower than him, if he starts firing lots of HE, that could be bad. However, the guy appears to have stopped dead in the water, and that was a bit of a fatal mistake. So there we go, that was a first blood and a devastating strike, and it's taken till the 14-minute mark. We've had 6 minutes of this battle before anybody died, and he actually gets another hit on that New Mexico. So there we go, that was a pretty nice spread of torps indeed. He's already done 80,000 damage, and that was literally the first thing that was killed. So this has been pretty decent so far, but there's still a lot left to play for. So again, making another circle, and you'd think this New Mexico would have taken the hint as the other battleship did. You think he would have peeled off, gone in a different direction, taken evasive maneuvers. He's actually detected right now, And actually, I think the New Mexico this time does start to throw maneuvers earlier, but not early enough to avoid getting hit completely. There's also another Minikaze around here dropping torps, and there we go. So he is turning, but look how late he seems to have left it. Yeah, so he's going to take one, but those could have been all avoidable if he'd just been playing a bit smarter. So, yeah, I know Jingles does seem to pick on the battleship captains, but it's battleship captains like that. It's the ones that aren't paying attention. It's the ones that aren't joining up the dots of the, you know, the fact that there's a destroyer nearby means I should probably be maneuvering right now. But, yeah, on the other hand, if those particular battleship captains weren't around, that would make a lot of destroyer captains' lives a lot harder, I suppose. So we actually, I didn't know you could do that until I saw this replay. You can use the map feature, which of course is how you set waypoints, and it's something I normally only use when playing carriers. Yes, I've been back at the carriers again, I know. But I've been mostly playing fighter loadouts. But he used it to ping the minimap, and that's the thing I didn't know you could do. So at this point, he just goes for the very, very high-risk option and discovers there's a Nicholas. And this is the point where it could go all very wrong if it weren't for the fact that the Nicholas appears to have left the game. Now, possibly his client crashed. I've had one or two crashes myself. They may or may not be to do with the very, very few mods that I'm using. This is actually with the 5.0 replays, and all of these replays that you'll see are 5.0 replays. This is the point where the damage counter was still working, and there is a working damage counter that's bundled up with a minimap mod in the very latest version of Aslain's pack, but unfortunately the minimap mod seems to be bugged. So it's not really like the minimap mod that we see here. And there we go. I mean, that was a devastating strike. That was an easily farmed one, but whatever, it still counts. Now, he could have disengaged entirely at this point, and that would have been the smart thing to do, because that's a Cleveland. But he's got his sights set on the New Mexico that we last saw disappearing north. We know that the carriers are up there as well, and this has been risky to start with, but, you know, with high risk comes high reward. Now, he puts out one lot of torps against where he thinks that Cleveland was, or was going to be, and it might discourage the guy or delay him slightly, but it's not just the Cleveland he has to worry about. There was also a Furataka that was last spotted heading back in this direction, and there it is. Now, that has a much less worrisome rate of fire than the Cleveland, but if it hits, those 8-inch, is it? Yeah, it is 8-inch HE shells. They can do a lot of damage, and yeah, this is all kinds of bad. He's just lost most of his health in one go. So another spread against that Furataka. The Cleveland is pretty close now, and he's actually in the smoke that I think Trigger Happy himself dropped, and he puts out that spread blind. But I don't think that spread does anything. However, the spread that he put out against the Furataka, well, it's going to do something. And actually, you'll see. And you might be thinking, well, we've only had 3 medals up till now. We've only had 3. So, something else is going to happen. Actually, no, it wasn't that spread. Okay, it's the next spread. That's the thing with watching a lot of replays. You have to kind of keep the events of each one inside your head. And sometimes it gets a bit hard keeping track of what exactly happened when, at which point. Now, him versus 2 cruisers, of course it went badly wrong, but he gets that Cleveland. So it was the Cleveland he killed all the time. And he actually, with that one kill, got a Confederate, a high caliber, it's just a flesh wound, and another devastating strike, bringing his total up to 7. So it was all about that last salvo, really. 4 medals. Well, I say all about that last salvo. The Confederate and the high caliber, obviously, it kind of adds up over the battle with the amount of damage done. But yeah, no, that was. Now we're not gonna watch the rest of this. They do actually end up winning, and no, they don't. It's a draw. Wow, This is no. Okay, I'm just this is my brain not remembering what's going on at all. That was it. Okay, it was a last second draw. Yes, I know where I am now. I'm so good at this. I'm having to do this and try and get it all out all in one day. So this is maybe a little more harried than usual. But anyway, 1500 base XP on a draw, and basically it was very nearly a loss. The very last ship only just managed to stay alive. And it looked like they might have won. And if he hadn't pursued that high risk strategy, he might not have gotten the medals, but he possibly could have lived to influence the match. Anyway, now we're on to yet another Japanese destroyer. This is Chaos Kind in the Isokaze on the much beloved ocean map, and this is actually going to be another draw. I'm going to say that right at the start, so I actually don't just get hopelessly befuddled all over again. Yes, anyway, so this is the Tier 4 Japanese destroyer. It has, I think, also got 7-kilometer torpedoes, if I'm remembering correctly. It's not quite as fast as the Minikaze, and I think the torp reload speed is a bit slower, I'm not sure, but it's still a very capable machine. And actually there were other Isokaze entries. I think there was even a Wakatake entry or two, the Tier 3. And just the low tier Japanese destroyers generally, like that's the sweet spot for them in particular, because they can comfortably get torpedoes off whilst being undetected. Now, this initial engagement, I mean, it was going forward to spot, and this is the thing. I mean, this is probably the best map that there is for Japanese destroyers in particular at the lower tiers, or just, I suppose, destroyers generally in terms of detection ranges. But the thing is, you might bump into another destroyer, and by the time you've detected them, they've detected you, and yeah, he lost a big chunk of health because of that. So we're skipping ahead again, and most of the team is actually kind of in the middle, kind of to the west of the middle, if that makes any sense. They're in the western half of the map. I don't know. Normally you see on Ocean a big portion of the team, if not the entire team, will kind of go along the edges of the map, and it's unusual to see so many kind of in the middle. And it's not great because they can be shot from both the south and the east. But this map is just generally not great anyway. I mean, the whole map is just I don't even know. It's just a terrible map. Take it out. Wargaming plus. Anyway, he's looking to make a drop on one of these Wyomings. And again, I can't tell. I mean, he's clearly going for the front Wyoming, but I can't tell if it's just the replay was bugging out or if he actually still did have the focus set on the rear Wyoming. And I don't know. It's just the state of replays is such at the moment that it's entirely possible it was just the replay bugging out. So these might hit. I mean, it's about at the edge of his torpedo range, but if he gets some hits, it'll be nice. We're actually, as you can see, 8 minutes into this battle. 3 ships have died. They all missed. Okay, so never mind. He's going to have to try that again. Now, he is going to have to be a bit careful about which targets he selects here. And I will say, I don't think this is the best destroyer game I've ever seen. He gets a little bit lucky at times, and there's other times where he makes questionable choices about which targets he's dropping at. But for the most part, I think he's doing it okay. I mean, he's trying to select targets that he can see will be within the radius of the torpedo range. And there was actually one of the games I watched that I thought might be eligible, but turned out to be, it was a 4.11 game or something, a 4.1.1 game, so it wasn't within the rules of the contest, sadly. But it featured a Clemson, a Tier 2, that had failed platooned up with a Congo, and this guy was more of a menace to his own team, and it's just a miracle he didn't team kill anybody, because he was dropping torpedoes well out of range from behind friendly ships repeatedly. So like I say, it was a total miracle he didn't just nuke somebody out of the water. Anyway, Furitaka seems to be his target now, and again, seems to be, well, it's the only thing within range, but it's turning away, and he hasn't actually yet hit anything. And also, the markers still are a bit... I honestly can't tell if this is him or if this is the replay. But, I mean, at the very least, he's keeping these people spotted for his own team. And some of them would be spotted anyway, but some of the further back ones, possibly not. Range is a bit deceptive on this map because there's basically no landmarks. It can be very hard to tell. And if there wasn't that part of the over-target markers, and there we go, he actually got a hit from that spread. And another hit. Devastating strike. Okay, there's his first medal. It can be quite hard to know who's spotting what, and it doesn't actually matter for score purposes. There's no rewards for spotting damage or assistance damage, anything like that in this game. And I think for the US destroyers, and I will say for the upcoming Russian destroyers as well, that's something of a problem, because if you can't get close enough to use your torpedoes, well, and we go, another devastating strike. And that guy was coming towards him, so that was a good drop. That was the angle could have been a little bit better, but it was good enough. So yeah, I mean the Americans can at least hunt other destroyers, but I'm finding with the Russian destroyers so far that yeah, it's difficult because the guns aren't as good, but the torpedoes are far worse in a lot of ways. Well, they're better in some ways, but the whole philosophy of the Russians is quite different. They're not really gunboats at all, or at least not until the higher tiers. So I feel like for certain nations, having some form of assistance damage, some form of you know, getting XP for keeping other ships lit up, then yeah, it would make life more bearable for some of the grinds that you have to do. And I think especially the higher tier destroyers as well, where keeping enemies lit is just, it's important. Now this is the point where he says himself he'd had a bad day in terms of actually getting any wins. And that torpedo drop by the carrier made the Wyoming turn, which made all his torpedoes miss. And he gets a bit mad in the chat, and he says himself this was a mistake. He actually, after the battle, messaged the carrier driver on his own team to apologise for basically having a bit of a tantrum, because that's, I mean, I don't know what else to call it. But I mean, it's understandable if you're frustrated and you just want to... But it wasn't the carrier driver's fault, really. I mean, it wasn't a great drop to have made. He lost most of his torp bombers in the process. But, I mean, the Wyoming captain, if he'd been paying attention, maybe would have turned anyway. But, yeah, he just... I don't know. So he said himself that he regretted this immediately after the battle, this kind of verbal outburst. And I mean, I don't know, we've all been there. Even I occasionally get that frustrated that I get tempted to lash out in chat, and usually that's the point where I go, maybe I should take a break from this. And if I do say anything in the chat, it tends to be flavoured with a bit of sarcasm, and that's often not particularly helpful either, but it's maybe slightly better than just throwing my toys out of the pram, which is what he does here a little bit. But the game is still ongoing. There's still a chance to win this, and he's really playing with the edges of the limits of his torpedo range here. And I think he's actually trying to go for the Wyoming there that's just about to leave the range of his torpedoes. But he does drop one that looks like it's meant for the forward Wyoming as well. So I'm not quite sure. Again, is it the replay? Is it that he actually had that other Wyoming selected? I don't know. Because actually, having said what I've just said, it looks like most of those, all of those torpedoes are in fact going for the further away Wyoming. There we go. He gets one hit. And the other ones might do something. Maybe. I mean, he's already at 70k damage, which is pretty decent. Oh, there we go. Another 2 hits. And gets the kill. Devastating strike. There we go. So that's his 9th torpedo hit, his 3rd devastating strike. And this is, I mean, for the enemy battleships here now, this is kind of bad for them because they're being lit up by Chaos Kind, and they really can't do a lot about it because these are American battleships. They're slow, they've got no chance of catching him, and they've also got the Allied battleships shooting at them. So this guy is actually, and again, he's kind of heading in a, you know, towards Chaos kind of, and that makes his life a lot easier in terms of dropping these torps. If he turned towards the map border, these probably would have missed, but as it is, high caliber. Not enough to kill that New York, but enough to do a significant amount of damage. So at this point, he decides, I think, rather than go finish off that New York, that he's actually going to turn his attention to the Wyoming. And instead of doing what he's been doing so far, of playing with the ranges of his torpedoes, he decides to absolutely just go hell for leather and charge this guy down. Drop them in his face where he just can't dodge them at all. And this Wyoming looks like he was kind of heading towards the map border anyway. And honestly, I think Chaos Kind here could have just waited for the Wyoming to start humping the map border and then dropped torpedoes at that point. Because once you're on that map border, the fix they applied for, I think it was 4.1.1, and look at this is just inevitable doom. Another devastating strike. They kind of, I mean, you can still kind of slide along the map border, but you slide a lot slower. I think it makes it harder to turn, and you don't get that annoying, super annoying thing, which was actually probably the most annoying thing, where if you're trying to shoot at them, if you're shooting and the shots land outside the map border, they don't count, even though half the ship might be outside the map border as well. So it's better than it was. So he's headed back south. We know, we knew from the minimap traces, at least I did using the mod, that the carrier was last spotted, and lo and behold, he spots the carrier. And instead of just charging in and doing the same thing he did with the Wyoming, he's back to playing slightly more sensibly, but it looks very much like these torps are actually going to run out of range, because this Hosho is kind of, I mean, they're converging courses now at this point, but Chaos Kind is getting awfully close, in fact close enough that he might actually get detected. And although the course of these torpedoes looks true, yeah, it didn't quite have the range. He dropped those a little bit prematurely. Now there we go, he just gets detected, 5.9 kilometer range, and that's because he's got the camo, the concealment increasing paint. I don't know, there needs to be a neat way of saying that, and there probably is that I just can't think of. But he just, at this point, throws all caution to the wind and opens fire. However, there's a New York and a Kuma and a Nicholas on the enemy cap circle. He's not taking evasive action here. And with the Japanese destroyer guns, yeah, that would be difficult to keep his guns on target if he was taking evasive action. And I can see why he opened fire. He wants to set this guy alight so that if he gets hit, and there's the Confederate medal, if he gets hit, then he'll just flood. But because he hasn't been taking evasive action, and because the Hosho wasn't just, I mean, the Hosho, very well aware there was a destroyer gunning for him at this point, so managed to avoid most of those torpedoes. But this has basically ruined Chaos Kind's chances of getting away from this alive entirely. And there we go, he's dead. So that was 6 medals. But the previous one had 7. And I've been doing these in order of XP, by the way, because what I said was that if people had the same number of medals, it would be the base XP for the game, which is why I needed those score screens particularly. But in terms of, you know, the runners-up, it doesn't matter. Everybody's getting a Diana anyway. But anyway, he hit that carrier. The carrier had used his repairs. So, even though it's only 6 medals now, any second now, replay, any second now, there we go, it's just a flesh wound, bumps it up to number 7. Now we have just about run out of time, and this is going to be a draw. As I said at the start, I didn't get horribly confused this time, I actually got it correct, there we go. So, yes, a bit disappointing, but this was even more torpedo damage than the last time. Like I said, I don't think that was a perfect destroyer game by any means, but it was still pretty good in terms of its results. He had 16 torpedo hits there, 7 medals, 1652 base XP on a draw, significantly better than anyone on either team, as we can see. And if these had been sorted by XP, you could have seen that he was easily, you know, his score was over twice as good as the next best person on his own team. So, yeah, that was pretty impressive. That was, in fact, 167,000 torpedo damage, plus an extra, like, 20,000 damage from the HE and fires. So, yeah. All in all, very good game, and I think that despite it being a little bit derpy in places, this was well worthy of a winning place. Although there were many worthy replays sent to me, I will say. So that wraps up this first video. Tomorrow, I think what I'm going to do is have the first of the preview videos of the new ships that are coming in, probably the Russian destroyers. And I'm probably going to break those up into multiple videos as well. But the day after, Monday, I'm going to have the next lot of runners up, and then we'll have the final winners on Wednesday. And I will say, as of recording this video, everybody's out of the Wargaming office for the weekend. I don't have the codes yet, so please be patient. So I hope you enjoyed these replays. You can hit the like button if so. You can leave any comments below. You can subscribe to my channel. And as always, stay tuned for more.